Chapter 71, Chapter 71, The Axe and the Angel. Chapter 71, The Axe and the Angel.
That's your wife?
Peach asked in a daze.
I thought she what? Died?
Bowsette balked.
No. She walked out on me and her entire family to go find herself and then disappeared completely. You sure still found me,
Claudia said, her toothy, sharp-fanged grin a clear mirror to Bowsette's own typical smile.
Kaka. Woman, you have no idea what kind of spies I have around here,
Bowsette said.
My network is vast. Or you just remembered the place where we found the first piece of the Firestone amulet? Where we first made love?
Peach blushed and tried to distance herself from this conversation, but Bowsette kept her by her side.
Whatever. I just can't believe after all this time, you would still just be here. What can I say? I like it in the Bananan Ruins,
Claudia said.
Lots of stuff to kill. Nobody around. No responsibilities except keeping yourself alive. Weather's always warm, but not too warm. It's a paradise. But what about our children?
Claudia shrugged.
Sorry. I'm not perfect. I was your angel of death. Not your angel of motherhood.
Peach raised an eyebrow.
Angel of death. My nickname for her. Your relationship was weird. You don't know the half of it, honey,
Claudia says.
This one over here, for a good 2 years, refused to go to sleep without a plush doll to hold. Said it was an anxiety thing. We were fighting a bloody revolution. I really needed some comfort. Sex was good enough comfort for me, she said. Ka. I knew you were a girl inside, Bowsette. Kind of a cheap name change, isn't that? Wait, what?
Bowsette asked.
What are you talking about, you knew? We were inseparable, honey. We knew everything about each other. And you expect me not to remember all those conversations we had? About the way you felt detached from yourself, your masculinity, some weird guys. I mean, I never said anything about feeling like a woman. I didn't even realize it myself until I had been Bowsette for half a year. Well, it's hard to get past the fact you were the sweetest, most emotionally vulnerable little Koopa out there, and I loved you for it. But, stereotypes and all, I never wanted to just confront you about it. Probably should've. Yeah. That would have utterly changed the course of the rest of my life, Claudia,
Bowsette said.
Wow, I wish you had told me. And I wish I had done a lot of things differently,
Claudia said. Her cheerful demeanor collapsed instantly and she fell to her knees, sobbing. Her necklace dangled off her neck.
I'm so sorry, Bowsette. I never should have left you. My babies.
Bowsette paid it no mind.
Well, I suspect you know why I'm here. You may not know the details, but I'll give you the short of it. The world's in danger. Morden Koopa has been revived as an undead skeleton and has taken over Dark Land again, all thanks to Kamek being a dumbass. He always was one,
Claudia said, still shedding tears.
Yeah. So, I need the axe again. I don't know if it'll do any good this time with no Firestone amulet, but it's our only shot. 5 of the generals are dead or incapacitated. We're on our last legs. So, Angel of Death. Where is it? Don't call me that anymore,
Claudia said.
I don't deserve it.
She was practically bowing to Bowsette at this point. It was honestly a little pathetic.
Okay, Claudia. Will you buck up, grow a shell, and give me what I'm here for?
Claudia got back up. Her shell, unassuming and smooth before, suddenly jutted out with spikes.
You can't have the axe,
she said.
I made a vow, with you, to keep it safe, so it would never again fall in the hands of anyone looking to use it for war. Including you. Well. Yeah. But. Fight me for it. No.
Bowsette shook her head. Claudia extended her claws, snarled, and began circling around Bowsette.
You've gone all soft. Literally. You're half a human now. Good look on you, but not a good look on you when you get pulverized. You had better get out of the Bananan ruins now, or I won't hold back.
Bowsette pushed Peach back a few steps and then clapped her hands together. Here was a new technique she had been working on recently. Her entire body turned red, and fire jutted up around her, covering her in an aura of flames.
Ka-ka-ka-ka-ka-ka. Ka-ka-ka-ka-ka-ka. Ka-ka-ka. Look at you. You think that fleshy body can stand up to me when we're the same size now? You don't stand a chance. I've lived in the wilderness for decades. You've lived the cushy royal life. We're completely different beasts. I don't even have a chomp shell, you know,
Bowsette said.
I'm going to beat you down with my claws alone.
Peach got the heck out of the way and let the two start circling around each other in the middle of this temple room. Bowsette flashed her teeth.
I'm getting that axe.
End of chapter. Chapter 72, Chapter 72, Koopa vs. Koopa. Chapter 72, Koopa vs. Koopa. The duel between Bowsette and Claudia Koopa had officially begun, with Bowsette extending her wings and blasting forward to punch her ex-wife in the face with a fistful of fire. Duels between the two used to be common. They had trained together nearly every day in their 5-year revolution against Morton Koopa. They knew each other's fighting styles as well as they knew each other's bodies. The difference now was that Bowsette had a new body. And she had a new fighting style. The martial arts heavy throws and kicks, the hard swipes and shell spins she was so known for as Bowser had been eliminated. She was powerful, but not enough to simply knock someone down with a gimpy smash like she once could. No, she was faster. She was smaller. She didn't need to take the brunt of damage and shrug it off. In fact, she didn't need to be hit at all. Claudia adapted quickly to this new her, though. She stopped trying to weave around to catch Bowsette by the tail to throw her around, and instead dropping into a defensive position. She curled up into her shell and shot a few of her spikes forward. Bowsette couldn't dodge these spikes, because they flew too fast, too furiously, and so several of them stuck into her and sent her flying backwards. She couldn't use her wings again, clearly, because she would get them ripped up, but she did the next best thing. After ripping the spikes out of her body and tossing them to the floor, she jumped up and shot out a fireball out of her mouth. Claudia blocked it with her shell, but that was exactly the predictable kind of move she'd make. When Bowsette was just over the shell, before any more spikes could form and launch, Bowsette breathed out a stream of fire, levitating herself from the sheer force of the blast and burning fire so hot around Claudia that she began to spin around as she hid inside her shell. Once Bowsette released, she dropped on the ground and kicked the shell with great force, sending it bouncing around the temple and very nearly hitting Peach in the face. Every time the shell came near Bowsette, she bashed it again, sometimes with her fists, sometimes with her head, and let it ricochet rapidly around the room. Soon, when Claudia actually worked out the will to escape from the inside of her shell, she was so dizzy that she simply crashed into the wall again, unable to control her movement.
Kaka.
Bowsette rushed over to Claudia and put her in a vice grip, latching her arm around her neck. Claudia, still too disoriented to do much attacking, lashed her tail back and forth trying to strike against Bowsette, but she simply stepped on that tail and made her squeal out.
Ready to say uncle?
Bowsette asked.
What does that mean? Are you ready to give up? Ka.
Claudia slipped into her shell again, getting free of Bowsette's grip, and then shooting out more spikes from the back of her shell. Most of them hit her, and really hurt too. But Bowsette wasn't even close to started with this. She jumped and somersaulted around and then kicked Claudia in the chest, sending her reeling backwards. She followed it up with another fireball that impacted with great fiery force, and then finished with a tail whip to the forehead, knocking her to the ground. Claudia laid on the ground, struggling and failing to get back up.
Looks like this is over,
Bowsette said.
Guess your survival skills weren't so good in combat after all, hey.
And then Bowsette felt something heavy at her feet, and her face crashed onto the floor. Claudia had tripped her. Ah! Claudia picked Bowsette up by the tail in that single moment and, humiliatingly, began spinning her around like a top. Just like Boom Boom, Claudia's spinning powers were a thing of miracles, and even Mario would be jealous about how easy it was to dispatch a foe in this manner. Bowsette got too dizzy to remain fully conscious of her surroundings, just as Claudia let go and she went flying into the wall. With a crack, the wall cracked, that is, Bowsette flopped on the ground and remained completely unable to move probably for the rest of her life. Ow!
Ka.
Claudia chortled.
Good fight. Good fight.
Claudia grinned.
Well, anyway, the axe is yours. If you're willing to fight me like that, I know you're serious. So I'm willing to break my oath for that.
Bowsette stumbled back onto her feet, and then fell forward. Peach helped her up.
Claudia, why don't you come with us? We still need more generals for our army.
No, the answer was as simple as that. Claudia was not leaving this place. It had become a self-exile, much like Bowsette's own almost 2 years ago. She finally started to understand her ex-wife's emotions. After all these years wondering and regretting, why hadn't she reached out to her in all this time? She wasn't going to regret anymore. That was all. Claudia turned to Peach.
Take care of her, will ya? You guys are lovers or something, right? We're wives,
Peach said.
And I will. Ha! Never thought she'd get over me.
She said, smiling even though it was clear from her face that she was very upset about that fact.
Well, best of luck to you. Thank you,
said Bowsette.
Also,
Claudia added.
I don't know your name. Peach, King of the Royal House Toadstool.
Claudia eyed Bowsette.
Well, Peach, I have a bit of advice to you. It might not be the same in that form, but, the weak points the back of her knees.
Peach blushed, but said,
Yeah. I know. Keka. Well then, did you also know she's really into tail pl?
Bowsette jumped in front of Claudia and covered her mouth.
Let's go get that axe,
Bowsette exclaimed. Peach winked. They went further into the temple where they eventually stumbled upon, well, an axe. It was too big for any human to successfully wield, and big enough that even Bowsette in her Koopa form would have trouble doing much with it. However, it had been Morton's most impressive weapon and the thing that defeated him as well. It was a bit rusty, and cobwebs covered it. But it still looked as formidable as ever.
There it is,
Claudia said.
You sure about this? Do you know any other way we could defeat him? The power of friendship? The power of self-actualization. Oh, Claudia.
She had missed her. She no longer loved her, not in the same way. But she still missed her.
And I have to guess,
Peach said.
That necklace around Claudia's neck, that's the Firestone amulet. It was,
Bowsette said.
It was a one-time use. It was originally bright red, and much bigger, but it shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, leaving only that grey stone behind. I keep it as a memento. It's all I have left. There's a chance that this axe will still have some faint glimmer of the Firestone's energy left imbued within it,
Bowsette said.
But even if not, then we can still use it to cut his head off, right? Can you even wield that thing? If I use it like a comically oversized baseball bat, maybe? We'll see.
Bowsette turned to Claudia.
Thank you. Will I ever see me again? Do you want to? Is it okay if I see my children someday?
Bowsette softly smiled.
If the battle goes well, and the Koopalings don't still hate you, then yeah. We'll come back as a family to see you. Then good luck. Keep on surviving,
Bowsette said.
That's all I ever do.
Bowsette and Peach left the temple and headed back out towards the nearest warp pipe, with Bowsette storing the axe safely in her hammer space pouch until it would next be needed. Seeing Claudia again like that, honestly, it made Bowsette feel a lot better about herself. Not to see someone suffering, but to realize that no, she wasn't the only messed up person in the world. Everyone was messed up in their own way, and dealing with it however they could.
I do have one last thing to ask, though,
Peach said.
Yeah? What is it? What about your second wife? The one you had Bowser Jr. with? Does she have some super dramatic story behind her too?
Bowsette sighed.
Kylie Koopa is a lesson never to date anyone you meet in New Donk City. That's all I'll say about that.
And that's all Peach asked about that. End of chapter. Chapter 73, Chapter 73, Knighthood. Chapter 73, Knighthood. Now that Peach's castle no longer functioned as a center of a national government and was simply the estate of the absurdly rich, self-deposed King Peach, it was a lot quieter around here. Peach was very pleased about it that way. Other than her friends, her wife, and a few housekeepers and handmaidens, she had the whole castle to herself. Thanks to this, she was able to set up an entire display with charts and maps and graphs for everyone to see. Everyone who ended up volunteering to join Peach's war effort, that was. It was a total of about 30 people so far. She really hoped more people would join. There was an entire group of toads, a Lakitu and Koopa couple that seemed a little too young to be joining this kind of fight, and a few of Mario's former adventure partners, including Goombario and Cooper, as well as Vivian and Admiral Bobbery. Of course, there was also the usual crowd of Mario, Luigi, Captain Toad, Yoshi, and Birdo. Almost all of these people were among those who had fought and been defeated by Bowsette all that time ago. It was very interesting to see them all readily join back up to help save Bowsette's homeland from self-destruction. The only notable absence was Toadette. Turns out, like Bowsette seemed to suspect, wasn't actually visiting a cousin. Well, they were allegedly third cousins, but it was definitely not a family visit when Toadette ended up spending the night 3 times in a row. Apparently, she had decided to stay in Shiver City with her new boyfriend for good and had fully moved in with him. Good for her. Now that everyone was here that would likely be here, Peach cleared her throat and began discussing with them the entire situation.
I want to tell everyone about what's happening here, more of an update than last time for anyone who heard this before. We are facing a worldwide crisis and we're going to need to get the world to unite to solve it, difficult as it may be.
Ironic for Peach to say this after she de-unified the Mushroom Kingdom, but unity in a spiritual sense was what she actually meant.
Morden Koopa, the undead King Koopa, is planning on reviving an ancient evil to destroy the planet. It is known as a Dread Lord, a kind of dragon from many eons ago, long before any of our races were even thought to have ever existed. Their main goal, according to legend, is to consume and destroy until there is nothing else, and then lay their eggs in the core of the planet before they cast themselves off into space towards a new destination. Then once the planet has revitalized itself millions of years later, new Dread Lords hatch and begin the process again.
Mamma mia, Mario said. Luigi was shaking in fear, as usual. Peach continued.
We will never be able to defeat a Dread Lord if fully revived. So we must stop Morden before he can do that, or even come close to doing that. But the last time Morden was destroyed, it took 7 complete armies as well as a special magical amulet that no longer exists. So as far as we have been able to figure, there is no foolproof way to win this.
Now the toads were shaking in fear as well.
But, fortunately, because Morden is undead, even if he is a 16-foot-tall behemoth, he is nowhere near the height of his power. We may be able to take him down much more easily this time. But even so, we will still need to gather a force large enough to defeat the Koopa troop and free the people of Dark Land that have been subjugated to his rule. If you look here, this is a list of our current coalition. We have 2 generals with forces that will allow us to fight in large-scale battles, Whomp King and King Boo. There is also Bowsette's son Iggy, who is leading a resistance force within Dark Land at this very moment. Beyond that, though we have nothing. Our ally Nabbit has been apparently trying to recruit more forces, but he has gotten mixed success so far as we've heard. Therefore, I am going to institute a new drive that will change everything. All of you who have decided to join me in saving the world and risk your lives, will be a part of my army. House Toadstool will lend its full support to Bowsette's army and I will act as a general. I do not have significant combat experience, and I assume none of you do either. Even my guards are relatively untrained. But we have Bowsette here, as well as Mario and Luigi and several others, who will begin training all of us. Before long, we will be able to fight just the same as the rest of them.
Bowsette and the others were taken aback by this. She hadn't consulted about it with them. But they surely knew that in this time of need, desperate measures were needed, so she didn't think it was necessary.
Even though House Toadstool no longer governs a nation, it is still a powerful royal estate, and therefore I am instating a new rank for those who fight for me to the ends of the earth. You will not be my soldiers in any small sense. You will be knights of the Toadstool. With swords and everything.
This certainly made a lot of the toads interested, but some of them were clearly about to go home after this because apparently danger and training weren't actually what they had signed up for. That didn't matter, not to Peach. She only wanted those who would be brave enough to serve, so those others were right in leaving.
So, is everyone ready? Because we're going to start tomorrow, first thing in the morning. If you want to become a knight, here is your chance.
She looked over to Bowsette, who was grinning like a madwoman. She grinned back. End of chapter. Chapter 74, Chapter 74, Training Day. Chapter 74, Training Day. Peach, dressed up in her tennis clothes, met up with all the new Toadstool trainees that would shortly be getting into what could become the most important part of their lives. Despite the initial hesitancy, as far as Peach could tell, every single person from the original meeting yesterday had shown up here. There were actually a few more, there were a couple spikes here now, and that Thugan badge salesman Rolf had even shown up. This was going to be exciting. Since she was no longer going to act as a regal King Peach like she was doing, she took her place among the crowd, as she was going to be participating in the training just as everyone else. Bowsette, who had hardly been able to wake up in the morning thanks to staying up too late fretting about her children and about saving the planet again, was just now walking outside, carrying a strong coffee in her hand and gulping it down. Peach smiled at her, but she hadn't noticed her yet.
Hi, Miss Princess? Or, King? Lady Peach? Oh, yes.
She turned around and saw the two Koopas she had noticed before, both in cute pigtails and dressed up like they were about to do yoga. Since the Lakitu one was no longer on a cloud, she stood a full head shorter than her partner, though they both still held hands.
We just wanted to say, the
Koopa stammered.
We just wanted to say we think you're a badass and awesome.
The Lakitu shouted.
Lulu. Sorry. We always thought you were some royal pansy, but then we heard your speeches about how you don't care about what people think and how people need to stop being jerks to everyone else and, like, you're too cool. Man. I can't believe I'm talking to you. Well, you know what? It's true. I am a royal pansy. I didn't do enough to help stop the violence and dismay happening in the Mushroom Kingdom, and by the time I acted it was too late. The seeds sown had already grown into weeds, choking the lifeblood of the soil away. See? She even says cool stuff in normal talking.
The Lakitu said.
Peach. You're our hero. And to help the cause of Koopas getting treated fairly, we've decided to help you out, even if it means risking our lives. Because a hero like you doesn't deserve to go alone, okay? I'm no hero,
Peach said.
That's what heroes say. Lulu, let's stop bugging her. Oh, okay. Sorry Princess King Peach.
The two, still holding hands, scampered away to another spot on the field. Suddenly, Peach felt an arm around her shoulder. She could tell from the heat alone that it was her wife.
Ah, young love,
Bowsette said.
Isn't it beautiful? We got married 1 month ago,
Peach said.
Aren't we young love too? Are we not beautiful too? Oh, stop it! Hey, what's that?
A voice shouted. People started pointing to an object floating in the sky.
Wait, why is he coming now?
Peach asked.
I thought we said 4:30. Maybe he thought it was 4:30 AM and he's actually a couple hours late.
Bowsette suggested sarcastically. Peach ran in front of the trainees and waved her hands around.
Sorry, everyone. Nothing to see there,
she shouted.
That's just Hwamp King, one of our new generals, coming to see us. He'll be here shortly, but we do still need to start our training, okay?
The generals were coming today to being assembling their forces together and figuring out a real battle plan. But they still needed to start training their own small army, so they needed to kick this into overdrive.
Bowsette, you better train us hard. Like, to death. Whatever you say, my dear,
Bowsette said, smirking. Peach should have been more careful with her words, however. Because the training this day was more grueling than anything she had ever been through in her entire life. End of chapter. Chapter 75, Chapter 75, The Generals. Chapter 75, The Generals. Wow! Bowsette hadn't seen anything like it in a long time. And that was saying something considering how many times she had forced her entire armies to gather around the castle while she made some big puffy speech about how they were going to bring down the Mushroom Kingdom once and for all, or whatever. But the generals were finally assembling. Hwamp King's fortress floated directly above Peach's castle, and its Hwamp and Thwomp denizens patrolled the castle grounds in case of any attackers. It wasn't likely, of course, even with the dissolution of the Union that created the Mushroom Kingdom, the local municipalities of each city and each region were still around and still surviving. The mayor of Toad Town was already beginning discussions with its neighboring cities to form a republic. Not that Bowsette actually believed that it would all go down without any bloodshed, especially with those bigot nationalist toads still marching around in their pink shirts chanting about keeping Toad Town pure. There was bound to be some fighting once power-hungry authoritarians started trying to carve up a little slice of territory for themselves. That was one of the main reasons she ended up consolidating power in Dark Land for herself. If she was the central ruler, then it would discourage the kind of chaos that these situations usually caused. However, in the end, she became just the kind of authoritarian that her biological father was. Less brutal, but still a military dictator through and through. So she would admit fully that she was simply wrong. King Boo had also arrived with his many ghosts, now haunting one of the side houses near the castle where guests used to stay when the castle was in governmental use. It was much better that way than to allow the Boos to inevitably haunt and torture the living residents of the castle proper. He greeted Bowsette with a lick to the face, but he and Luigi seemed to be hitting it off better than usual, because Luigi actually went to the guest house of his own accord to visit. Along with King Boo arrived his daughter Lady Bow, who immediately greeted Mario with a kiss on the lips. Just when Bowsette had started to think that Mario's history with the ladies was through and through, another example popped up. Who hadn't he had his plumberly ways with? Still, this place was getting a lot livelier now that there were two new armies inhabiting Peach's castle. Along with the trainees trying to become knights of the Toadstool, it was almost more people than inhabited the place on a normal occasion. Bowsette honestly felt a bit uncomfortable around so many people. Unlike Bowser's castle of days past, this place did not have the space and wide open arenas for so many people at once. The entire dining hall had been turned from a fancy eating area into what was essentially a cafeteria. They were at the Toadstool Battle School, practically. Bowsette tolerated it as well as she could. It was still nice these past weeks with being able to train Peach. She had gotten used to her frying pan as a weapon, so Bowsette let her expand upon that, using a magic-infused frying pan that had elemental wind attacks to go along with each swing. She was no adept, but she didn't collapse after 2 clashes with Bowsette and a training sword anymore, so it was good progress. Of course, Bowsette had been training on her own too. Her powers were starting to increase in ways that she had never predicted. Along with her ability to generate fire from any part of her body by increasing her core body temperature, she had also learned to use the flaps of her wings to push opponents away from her, and to do it fast enough that it was useful in real combat situations. She had also figured out, by studying the way that her ex-wife Claudia's shell spikes worked, that she could actually do the same thing with her tail. There were 3 spikes on there that she could launch whenever she wanted. It'd take a while for them to reform, but it was very useful in a dire situation, even if it made her tail look less cool. All of this was going to be nothing towards fighting Morden, though, and that's why Bowsette continued training with the axe as well, hoping and praying to Brighton that it would somehow work to destroy his skeleton even at low magical power, or with none at all. 2 generals wasn't enough to defeat the Forest of Dark Land. Even with Peach training to become the 3rd and Iggy the presumed 4th, they were still 3 generals short of a true fighting force. Nabbit should be reporting back any day though, so Bowsette was somewhat hopeful for once. That was weird and different. End of chapter. Chapter 76, Chapter 76, yes finally. Chapter 76, finally yes. It was the day. Yes. Amazing. Wow. They hadn't gotten around to it in all this time due to extenuating circumstances like Peach having to deal with a gaping electricity wound, or having to defy death and destruction by every foe imaginable. That kind of thing. But now it was time. Peach and Bowsette were taking a bath together. Warm, extremely warm, in fact, for Peach's standards. But for Bowsette, it probably was barely lukewarm. Still, they both laid in the tub in a quiet peace, with Bowsette's arms wrapped around Peach's stomach, and Peach laying back on Bowsette's very cushiony chest. She had seriously fallen asleep like this, albeit only for a couple minutes before Bowsette got scared that she had passed out. Believe her, though, passing out was not the most unlikely option here. Training had been incredibly intense, and Peach was completely exhausted every evening after it was all over. For the first week after training started, she took several-hour baths every night just to calm her muscles down, and refused to even go near Bowsette because she was so mad that Bowsette had pushed her so hard. Of course, it was a good thing. Peach had finally started to be able to fight, for the first time in her life. She could actually kick and punch and wield a practice sword, or, more usefully, her magic-infused frying pan. Very fun stuff, she thought. And she really liked actually feeling useful for once in her life, rather than a sidekick to any of the action actually going on between the real combatants. There was one more thing, though.
Bowsette, can you teach me some magic? Combat magic?
Peach asked. She wrapped her fingers into Bowsette's, and with Bowsette's other hand she lathered shampoo into Peach's hair.
Sure thing. What kind? Anything. All I can do is make shields sometimes. I'm sure that I have more power than that, right? I honestly have no clue. My father told me that, my real father told me that the way my magic operates is different than most. I don't have a soul with magical powers like most people. My magic is encoded into my DNA as a result of descending from celestial dragons or whatever. Sounds like a lot of bullshit. Probably. But I'll try to help you. Knowing you, you can probably master ice magic really quickly. And why is that?
Because, Bowsette said. She squeezed Peach's stomach suddenly and made her yelp.
That'd make you and me perfect opposites.
They both giggled.
I love this,
Peach said.
Just this. Being married to you and taking baths with you and sleeping in the same bed as you and waking up seeing your pretty face. 2 years ago I don't think I could have even conceived of something like this. Being married to your enemy. Being married to a girl. Wait. I'll admit it,
Peach said.
I hadn't eliminated you completely as a romantic possibility, despite all those kidnappings. You were an awful brute, but there was just something about you. I mean, it's not like you've changed that much. You're just showing yourself better. No, I mean wait on the other part. Oh. I'll admit this too. My experience with romance and women has been very limited until you. Some experimenting with a friend Todiko when we were teenagers, a couple flings here and there. Not one actual relationship until you. It was all princes and plumbers. So I'm special.
Bowsette was giddy saying this.
The most special, Peach said.
Their bath continued like this, just warm feelings and warm water. End of chapter. Chapter 77, Chapter 77, Lucky Days. Chapter 77, Lucky Days. Bowsette and Peach had been invited to a slightly fancy dinner over in Toad Town at Tasty's house. She was still a big supporter of former King Peach and had offered to cook her very best shroom steaks, as well as a yummy meal to cap it off for dessert. The couple had of course accepted, and Mario had come along with his newest muse, Lady Bow. Bowsette had learned a little more about that one. Apparently back when Lady Bow and Mario became adventuring partners, they had become a lot more than that, and on their quest to rescue the star spirits they had actually gotten pretty serious together. Mario would have had to sacrifice his corporeal form and become a ghostly spirit to have actually married into the family, though, so it never went anywhere after the star rod was saved, but Bowsette thought it was very interesting that the two were picking up where they left off when King Boo had already seemed to take more than just a liking to Mario's own brother. It was a lot of dynamics that were a bit too weird for Bowsette to think too deeply into, so that was all that she was going to put into that for now. Peach and Bowsette each received a shroom steak at the same time and dug in. Bowsette thought that the emphasis on vegetables over meat was not actually as good as she was hoping, as the carnivorous beast she was, but... Holy crap, Peach, what are you doing? Her wife was absolutely devouring the shroom steak as if it were some sort of monstrosity. This was unbecoming of royalty. She guessed her training was starting to make a real impact on her calorie intake after all. It was so unexpected that Bowsette, Mario, and Bow couldn't help but burst into laughter all at once, embarrassing Peach and making her stop.
You guys are so rude. Hey, far be it from me to criticize your eating habits,
Bowsette said.
I'm glad you're eating more, because that means you might get as buff as me one day.
Bowsette flexed her bicep and Peach giggled while rolling her eyes. Mario laughed too, which caught Bowsette off guard a little bit. He wasn't too big of a laugher, but he had done so twice in a row. Was he just in a better mood, or was he showing off for Bow or something? It was hard to tell because the guy so rarely expressed himself. Were the two of them really going to be rivals still, in the future? Were they really going to continue fighting and beating each other up, now that Bowsette was married to Peach, and the cycle of kidnapping and geopolitical standoffs was no longer going to be a factor? Now that, really, Bowsette probably wasn't even ever going to rule a kingdom again unless something significant happened? That's what Mario had promised her when they slept together all that time ago. He probably didn't even remember. It was, of course, stuck in Bowsette's memory and would undoubtedly be there like a jam in jelly against a freshly painted wall for the rest of her life. It made her blush every time Mario flirted with another girl, not out of jealousy, but on the unavoidable moment that her mind would flash to Mario making love with that same girl later in that night. Now that she had experienced it, and admittedly enjoyed it a lot, she had far too good of an ability to estimate how it would play out. Of course, Mario's recent targets had been quite interesting in terms of species. How did a human and a Goomba, or a human and a Boo, even, make it work? She had told herself she wouldn't think about this kind of thing anymore. Peach realized Bowsette was getting lost in thought again and nudged her, but then it only pushed Bowsette's mind to a new topic, the fact that Peach and Bowsette, both having been romantic targets for Mario now, were sitting across from this dude and were probably both simultaneously thinking about this pretty awkward situation. They were all adults. It just worked that way sometimes, There was nothing wrong with it. Bowsette had needs, so did Mario. Peach and Mario's on and off romantic endeavors were an oft-lamented fact of Mushroom Kingdom lore, but in the end the two didn't ever end up really consummating it. In terms of a serious relationship, that was. Obviously they had consummated it otherwise. Why was it always at these kinds of fancy dinners when Bowsette's mind turned to topics of sex? Was it because the food was so good that nobody talked and she couldn't fill her mind with any meaningless topics? Was it because Bowsette was a depraved pervert? Both were equally compelling options. But as Bowsette took another look at her loving wife, enjoying her yummy meal now that Tasty was putting those out for her guests, she was reminded that she did not need to fret about this sort of thing. She was already emotionally and physically fulfilled by Peach, Wrecker of Hearts, the Grand Knight of the Toadstool Clan. Thinking about Mario in that regard was never going to lead to anything, because Bowsette simply didn't care. She took Peach's free hand from under the table and held it. Yep. This was the only life ever needed. End of chapter. Chapter 78, Chapter 78, Trio. Chapter 78, Trio. That was nice enough. Never, ever doing it again probably, but, it was nice. Bowsette laid at the side of the best, with Peach in the middle and Mario at the other side, with the two on the outer edges pulling the covers towards each other because the other was obviously hogging them. This wasn't supposed to happen again. Especially not like this. But it did. And yeah.
That was fun,
Peach said.
Quite,
Mario said. Bowsette was silent, and Peach turned her head to look at her.
It was cool, I guess. Bowsette. Okay, I think this was really awkward and we shouldn't have done it,
Bowsette said.
But the tension was there and obviously it was going to happen at some point, so, whatever.
Peach giggled.
For such a strong woman you get flustered so easily. I'm not flustered. I'm just... Yeah, I'm flustered. We already did it,
Mario said.
No take-backs now. I know, I just wonder if this will, impact our ability to be a team or whatever. Oh, actually,
Mario began.
Luigi and I got called by Rosalina yesterday. We're going off on a galactic adventure. What? No way. Dude, we can't defeat Morton Koopa without you.
Bowsette yelled.
Shh, keep it down, we're pillow talking,
Peach said, before kissing Bowsette on the lips.
Seriously though, what the heck, Mario? It's serious, he said. Tutanga has returned, and he is going to launch one of the moons of Saturn so it will collide with the Earth. That's much bigger than a Dreadlord, right? Fair point,
Bowsette said.
Well, we'll definitely miss you too,
Peach said.
Take care, though.
Mario leaned over Peach and kissed her.
I'll be fine. Hey, don't kiss my wife, sorry, I know, this is weird,
Bowsette said.
I'm so weirded out by this deal. I don't want to do it again. Well, we had to see how it would work,
Peach said.
You mentioned it like 5 times in the last 2 weeks. Did not. I mean, you didn't suggest it, but you mentioned the fact it could happen way too often for it to be a coincidence. I thought this might be more fun for you. It was fun, it was fun. I'm just too much of the jealous type. Sorry.
Bowser made a pouty face, so Peach took her cheeks and stretched them.
Ow, I hate it when you do that. You're the silliest villain I've ever met. I'm just emotionally vulnerable, geez.
The 3 of them laid in bed for a couple more minutes, cuddling as a unit, and Bowsette tried to warm up to the idea of all of this. It was quite difficult. The fact that it was as enjoyable as it was did not prevent Bowsette from feeling like a complete jerk about it, and overriding that just temporarily was nearly impossible. Still, she was glad Peach was open to stuff like this, and she was glad that she was able to help make Peach happy. That's what really mattered. If they were going to spend the rest of their lives together, it wouldn't be wise at all to start it off being a jerk about everything and dismissing it out of hand. Even if Bowsette was very uncomfortable with it. Actually no, Bowsette should have just said no. She was a total pushover though. How in the heck was Bowsette going to handle a domestic home life with her, if the 2 of them actually made it through with the soon arriving war? She had never really had one her entire life, seeing as Claudia left her before she had finally cemented peace within Dark Land, and Kylie Koopa was the furthest thing from a stable relationship one could have. It was going to be weird enough explaining to her kids that she was a woman, let alone that she had married Peach, who was no longer a princess, or a king for that matter. Everything had changed so dramatically that it was pretty weird to think about. In classic Bowsette fashion, she had overthought this to such a degree that it was no longer possible for her to figure out how she and Peach would actually fare in a normal, stable relationship without impending world destruction and such. Whatever. She was just going to hope for the best.
Well, I'm ready again if you are,
Mario said.
How about you? I'll sit this one out,
Peach said.
Count me in,
said Bowsette. Despite her mental reservations, her libido had no shame in continuing this. She sat up and leaned over her wife to embrace Mario in a hug.
No kissing though. Not doing it. Whatever you want, princess. No, technically it's queen. Or former queen. I don't know what my title is now. Just call me Lourdes. Not happening,
Mario said, leaping across the bed across Peach and to Bowsette's side. He accidentally bumped into Peach though and made her growl. So this was definitely a one-time deal, Bowsette decided. But she'd make it count while it lasted. End of chapter. Chapter 79, Chapter 79, Interlude for a Ghost. Chapter 79, Interlude for a Ghost. King Boo didn't love Luigi. Luigi didn't love him. Even still, it was an interesting thing they had going with one another. Luigi had come down to the guest house to visit almost every day this week after training, and they had gotten to know each other a whole lot better in that time. They had done a whole lot together, but most of all they had had some good conversations.
I just wish ghosts didn't spook people so much,
Luigi had said.
But spooking is in our nature,
King Boo said.
It's what we do. Yuck yuck yuck.
Today, though, King Boo felt like mixing things up. Yes, the Toadstools had promised of King Boo that he would receive a super crown for his service in the battle against Morton Koopa, after the battle was done and everything returned to normal. But King Boo was a crafty little bastard. Using the extremely well-known fact that boos can phase through walls, he just kinda entered the royal treasury and took one for himself. So once Luigi arrived after training and entered King Boo's quarters, King Boo had a lot to laugh about.
Well, this'll be the last time we can, meet up before I go to space,
Luigi said.
Gotta make it count, then,
said King Boo with a wink.
So, today, I thought we might play a board game,
Luigi said.
It's called Card Party. You use tokens to move around a board, but the board is made up of a bunch of random cards, so you never know what the layout will be. And you pick up stars and gain coins and stuff, but it's really fast-paced and… King Boo, are you listening? I'm sorry, Luigi,
King Boo said.
I have something better in mind for today. Again. No, something new. Look at this.
King Boo held up the super crown, glittering around in the palm of his translucent hand.
A SSS super crown. Where did you get that? Stole it. Oh, King Boo. Hey, I was gonna get one anyway, yuck 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 yuck. I just want to try it on and see if it's a good fit. You mean like with Bowsette? Ha, no. I mean I just wanna look sexy is all.
Luigi didn't rebuke that curiosity.
Well, here it goes,
King Boo said. He flicked his current crown away and it disappeared in a poof. He placed the super crown atop it, and there was a glowing light. Boo's body shifted, gained material form, and then… kaboom! Princess Bowsette was born. She was a ghastly mix of black and white, her eyes were bright red irises surrounded by pitch black sclera, and her tongue was still so long it stuck out of her mouth. Her hair, white and thin, went down all the way to her waist. And while her figure was daintier than she was hoping considering Bowsette's extremely nice figures, she appreciated the long sleeves of her dress going so far down they covered up her hands from view. Luigi was frozen solid by this transformation. Practically a ghost already.
Hey, I'm a girl now,
said Princess Bowsette.
Well, I guess that solves all the qualms we've had about certain issues, hey. But King Boo, you're not actually a girl, right?
Rude. Bowsette chided.
You might be right. Or may. It's a bit easier than it seems. Maybe when I'm like this, I'm a happy-go-lucky little princess.
She gave a lick to Luigi's cheek that gave a shock to his system.
And maybe when I'm like this,
she pulled off the super crown and transformed back into King Boo.
I'm the king I always was. I can be either or, whatever I feel like. Kinda convenient, isn't it? Well, what do you feel like now?
Luigi asked.
Whatever you want me to feel like.
King Boo licked Luigi again. As Princess Bowsette re-emerged, Luigi muttered,
I can't believe I'm in love with a ghost.
It wasn't true, though. This wasn't love. It was just a good time. That's what she told herself, at least. End of chapter. Chapter 80, Chapter 80, Arrival of Nabbit the Wanderer. Chapter 80, The Arrival of Nabbit the Wanderer. It was today that Bowsette and Peach would finally learn about the true fate of their ill-advised mission to Nabbit. When they first asked him for help, they really did think that he would bring a few contacts to them. But instead, he apparently ran around the globe doing a very poor job convincing anyone of anything, and had only reported into the toadstools twice. In a year. Twice. The two of them waited at the front entrance to the castle grounds, and Bowsette wondered whether, if she had tried just a little bit harder, maybe she could have gotten a better person to help them than Nabbit. He was just the first person that came to mind that was listed in her Bowser phone, and while he was fast, he certainly wasn't thorough. That was okay. If he actually got anyone worth having? It was a complete crapshoot. And then suddenly, in a zip of speed and motion blur, Nabbit appeared before them.
At your service, here's Nabbit. Bagged it, grabbed it, nabbed it, just like you said.
Nabbit said.
Hello,
said Bowsette.
Thanks for, contacting us this time. My pleasure. Got lots of loot. Stole lots of stuff. Real happy about it all. You're welcome. Glad to do it again. Not free of charge. Ain't that kind of guy. Gotta feed the wife and kids, you know. So, where's they? I got here first. Lots of people coming, don't worry. I'm just early. Too fast. Gotta go fast though. Early Paracupa catches the worm. I'm a rabbit though. I don't eat other animals. Just junk food. And coffee's good too. Got to admit I imbibe alcohol every now and then. It's good stuff when you're tired. Peps you up. Makes you. So when are they actually coming? Couple hours.
They waited a few more hours, the suspense utterly killing Bowsette as she began to fret if they weren't about to receive the absolute best generals of all time and they were going to completely die off from it all. But, sure enough, the generals came. The first was Flutter, a flying wiggler who ran a dojo somewhere up north with a huge variety of students under her command.
Hello,
Flutter said.
I am pleased to meet you. Your companion here told me a lot about you too. I may not have much in the way of resources, but my students and I are strong fighting companions. If you will allow us, we will be able to help turn the tide of battle against those who wish for the world to be buried in darkness. Thank you so much,
said Peach.
Who's that?
There was a shiny, metallic person in the back of the group of students, whose figure very closely resembled Peach herself. "Hey, now! Bowsette was the only Peach look-alike allowed around here."
"That is one of my newer pupils, Pink Gold Peach," Flutter said. "Her origins are a mystery, and she has long since taken a vow of silence. She is however a very skilled warrior in hand-to-hand combat." Okay then,"
Peach said. Afterwards, the second general arrived, Dr. Krieger, mad scientist from Diamond City way over on the other side of the continent. He was alone except for one short teenage girl who walked next to him.
"I am the industrious, inventive, revolutionary Dr. Krieger,"
he announced as if he was giving a Toad talk.
"Pleased to make your acquaintances, my two fine princesses." "Actually, neither of us are princesses, at least not anymore,"
said Bowsette. Peach glared at her for being simply unable to let people make the mistake without constantly correcting them on it.
"I mean, hello, Dr. Krieger. Your work is famous around the world. What about mine?"
the girl asked with perky enthusiasm. Bowsette and Peach stared at Dr. Krieger, not able to ask who she was without spoiling the fact that she was a complete unknown and probably making her bawl her eyes out. In the end, they simply ignored her question and pretended they didn't hear her.
"So we've heard you two were coming with other forces,"
Peach said.
"Was that accurate information?" "Just answer that question for yourself."
Dr. Krieger pressed a button on his remote, and within seconds, the castle grounds were stormed by literally hundreds of metallic soldiers, most of whom looked like recreations of the Smithy gang forces. Bowsette glared at him.
"Did you steal Smithy-era technology?" "I make no mention of things that could betray trade secrets," he said. "Just know that I have a fully robotic force at your command. Stopping Morton is of the highest priority for the safety of the world, and the well-being of the future generations that inhabit this earth, like my dear granddaughter here."
He put his hands on her shoulders, and she gave a grin. But they still didn't know her name. Well, that was a lot more forces than Bowsette was expecting. That was quite a few generals, too. Flutter, Krieger, Peach, Swamp King, King Boo, and with any luck Iggy as well. That was 6. 6 wasn't quite enough, but they would have to make do, if that was it.
"Is that everyone?"
Bowsette asked Nabbit by the end of this. He had been scurrying around the castle and the castle grounds all day almost non-stop, but he had finally ended up back where the two toadstools stood in wait.
"No, what are you talking about? I got everyone I could." "2 people? That'd be bad." "No, I got more than 2. Way more than 2. I got 3. 3 people. That's pretty good. Right. Yeah. Then. Who is it? It's already sunset." "Guess who?"
a voice said. Bowsette turned and saw Boom Boom, along with his girlfriend Pom Pom and a whole battalion of assorted Koopas.
"Boom Boom!"
Bowsette cried out, jumping into his arms and letting him spin her around like a child.
"You came back." "Yeah." "Boom Boom listened to your comments about how he always gives up halfway through and runs away. You were right. Even when we defeated Morton the first time, and Boom Boom was a trusted to ranked lieutenant, he still ran away after the main battle began. He regrets it so much. And he won't make the same mistake again." "These guys are all volunteers from the border near Dark Land,"
Pom Pom said.
"They have been getting attacked a lot more often lately, so they have decided to come help in your efforts." Well, it's really appreciated. Thank you.
7 generals. They actually had 7 generals now. Were they actually prepared for this battle? Not yet, certainly, but they were close. And that was crazy. Nabbit saluted and bowed at once.
Well, guess my work is done. Back to napping. Back to running around. Back to doing what I do. Going fast. Not slow. Doing cool.
He ran off. End of chapter.